Hoping everyone is learning a lot. Your brain still has some room left to learn some new things. My name is Jeff Hicks. I'm just me. I do PowerShell stuff from home. And one of the things I like to do is come and talk to people and share what I have discovered and work with things in PowerShell. And I try to think about what does someone need to know in order to use PowerShell? What would make their jobs easier? So a lot of the stuff that I write about, that I speak about, is all based on that. And working with PowerShell scheduled jobs seems a natural extension. So my talk is on putting PowerShell scheduled jobs to work, kind of ways that you can work with scheduled jobs. And as you're going to see, some things work, some things don't work, and maybe I can answer some questions about this. So I kind of have a pseudo agenda. Talk a little bit about what is a PowerShell scheduled job, and then some things that we're going to look at to manage them. I've got some demos. I'm basically going to fly through my slides and then just go right into the demos because I hate trying to toggle back and forth between PowerPoint and my demos. So, PowerShell scheduled jobs. This is a way of creating a scheduled task that's actually going to run some set of PowerShell commands. So you get the benefit of creating a background job, which most of you are familiar with PowerShell background jobs. So same kind of principle. I could use PowerShell commands, create a job, except I'm going to have it registered with the task scheduler, which means it can run regardless of whether anyone is logged on. PowerShell does not have to be running. So you can leverage what you know about how to do things in PowerShell and still make it run at a scheduled time. It does require, and this was introduced in PowerShell 3. So if you're still running PowerShell 2, you won't be able to take advantage of this feature. Again, the really cool thing is whatever script or script logic you put together is going to run regardless of whether PowerShell is running or even if anyone is logged on. So that's very helpful. Now, there is a difference though. When Windows 8 came out in Server 2012, there was also a scheduled task module, which allows you to manage scheduled tasks on Windows 8 and 2012 machines. This is different. The PowerShell scheduled jobs, as you're going to see here, goes into a certain spot in the task schedule. And we've got command lists to work with those scheduled jobs in a PowerShell session. The scheduled task manager module allows me to work with all scheduled tasks. I'm not going to talk about that, but I will show you, you will have to probably use those modules even to manage the PowerShell scheduled jobs. I have some scenarios where, even though I don't want to, that's the only tool I have available, and you'll see that. So, some scenarios where you might use this. Maybe you want on a bunch of servers to, every hour, take a little snapshot of performance data. Maybe something you're writing to a SQL database centrally, or maybe a local CSV file, and then later you go and pull the information. Something that you could do manually in PowerShell. Hey, when we run this across 10 machines that are mission critical, and take a snapshot of performance data. Maybe I need every morning at 6 a.m. I want to have a scheduled job to find critical events across all my servers and have that run maybe on each of those servers and have the results sent to me. Again, these are all things that you could do manually in PowerShell. All we're doing is saying, let's just make a scheduled job out of it. Maybe you want a weekly password report. What accounts this week have passwords that are going to be expiring or need to be renewed? Maybe you need, on a monthly basis, some critical service needs to be restarted.
Hey, that'll also work with expiring certificates. You should tell the Azure guys about that.
Only once every 4 years.
Now, the really nice thing in here, you're not just limited to PowerShell commands. I mean, you're limited to anything that you can run in a PowerShell session. So if you have some old, net use commands that you want that do the job, use them. If there's a PowerShell way, yeah, we use a PowerShell way, but if you've got some third-party command line tool and you have a PowerShell script that integrates that, fine, go ahead. So you're not limited to just running PowerShell as a PowerShell schedule job. It's anything that you can do in PowerShell, which is quite a bit. So, creating things across the enterprise. First off, you need to test, obviously, this goes without saying, test your PowerShell commands, make sure that they work interactively. If you try to create the scheduled job without testing, you're just making your life more difficult. So hope it goes without saying, take your command, make sure that it works interactively. We're going to see, I'm going to show you how to create a scheduled job. There are a number of commands that you need to use to create the trigger and register the job and all of that. You'll find it easier, I think, even though you can do it in a one-line command, you got to use some nested pipeline expressions. It's easier just to build a script. It can be a couple lines, and then just run that script to create the scheduled job. Now, what's really nice here, and you'll see this in some of my demonstrations, is if I have a script that creates a scheduled job, I can use invoke command and create that scheduled job remotely on 10, 100, or 1,000 servers. Now, I do have a few tips, and these are things that we'll also look at when I get to my demos. When you create a scheduled job, remember it's running the scheduled task. So that in the task service, you cannot access network resources unless you specify credential when you create the scheduled job. Because that credential has to be stored in the scheduled task. Otherwise, you can only access local resources on that machine. Everyone kind of follow what I'm saying here? So you'll see when I create my scheduled job, if I'm going to have something that's going to say write to a network share, I need to make sure that that job is created with a specific credential, even if it's my own credential. If you go later on and modify that scheduled job, you'll need to make sure you reset that password. Actually, it should be prompted. Now, I'm going to recommend that you create all of the jobs with the same credential. The reason being, the reason that scheduled jobs work is the job definition is written to disk and goes in the app data directory, Windows PowerShell, scheduled jobs. But it's for your account, whatever account created that job. Later, if you want to go and get job results, if you need to, you can only get job results or see scheduled jobs for the account that it created. Now, sure, if you have the permission to read other directories, say on a particular server, you can see the definitions, but they're really gnarly XML, and it's not easy at all to pull out, to look at a scheduled job that was created under a different credential. So think about it. Now you can still run jobs under different credentials. I'm talking about when you create the PowerShell scheduled job. So if you're using, for example, my example to use invoke command to run your script, run that under a credential that's going to be the same across all your machines. So you might be able to see them, but it's very, very difficult to get any job results. And lastly, my real tip here is kind of counter to my talk here. Maybe you don't need a scheduled job. There are a lot of things you can do with traditional scripting and remoting. So, for example, like the event log thing. Instead of maybe having that run as a scheduled job on 10 machines, maybe I just run it on my desktop and have it go out and remotely get those in those 10 machines. So just because you can do a scheduled job, think big picture. What am I really need to accomplish? Maybe it's much easier just to run a script periodically or just set it up on your machine. I know some people have like a management workstation or a management server, and they run all of their scripts and automated tasks from there. So yeah, maybe you still set the scheduled job, but it runs on one server, and then it goes out to get whatever else it needs to do just with traditional remoting and scripting. Now there is one bug that I've come across, and this is actually this filed on Connect. If you create a PowerShell scheduled job to run with different credentials than what you started it with, and this also for some reason seems to be related to if you create it as a weekly task, it won't run. You'll try to run it in the task schedule, you'll see a message about the task terminated by the user. It's a weird bug that is not always consistent in its behavior. It appears to be related to credentials, and because you need credentials if you want to access something on the network. So something seems to happen in the task schedule where he can't read the definition and it just aborts the job. But this is filed on Connect. So my workaround is don't use an alternate credential. Run, when you create the task, create it with the credential that you are going to be using anyway. All right, so checking the status of your jobs. There is a commandlet. Yep.
A lot of the schedule stuff doesn't give you very good feedback or debugging information.
No.
Is that the case here as well?
Yes.
So
I mean, the scheduled job is just another scheduled task.
Thanks.
I'm going to create one and I'll show you where that lives and what it looks like. In PowerShell, there's a PS scheduled job module. In PowerShell 3, we got a new job definition type, and you had to import that module in order to see those jobs and then get commands like get scheduled job. In PowerShell version 4, that job type is now loaded automatically. So you can just run get scheduled job and you can see the jobs. That requires PowerShell 3 or later. You will need, I'm sure you will, in order to manage scheduled jobs, you're going to have to use the scheduled task commandlets, such as get scheduled task or get scheduled task info, and that will require Windows 8 or later 2012, R2, all those things. And the machine that you're going to query, as you're going to see, also needs to be supporting remote management. I've got a 2008 R2 domain controller. Even though it's running PowerShell 3, I can't use get scheduled task against it because 2008 R2 doesn't have, at least the core anyway, doesn't have the appropriate backend sim bits for those commandlets to work. And then lastly, I have a module which I'll show you to export and import scheduled jobs. Now, ideally, if you planned ahead, you've built a script to do your job definition. So if you have to rebuild a machine, say, oh, I need to have these jobs, you go ahead and do that. But sometimes you create a scheduled job and realize, oh, that's really cool. I can't remember how I created it, but I want to use it over here now. So I wrote a module that basically exports the jobs to CLI XML and then recreates the job when you import it. So that's kind of cool. All right, so let's go to my demo. I'm just going to break out of that and see if I can get the resolution to work here. Right, so I'm in a remote desktop connection in my test domain. And let's start with creating a job. All right, so I have a little script here that takes as a parameter a credential. And I'm going to create a job trigger. I'm going to create a scheduled job that's going to run at 5 a.m. daily, like every 3 days. And I've also, because I'm going to end up writing to a file share, I also put in a random delay so I don't have multiple machines trying to access the same CSV file. There are lots of better ways to do this. This is just kind of a quick, easy, pseudo-interesting schedule job. So I create that schedule job, and then I have to define an action. Now my action here is just basically using WMI on the local machine. Remember, this is something that's going to run as a scheduled job on the remote machine to get some WMI information about the uses of C drive, file space, that sort of thing, and then writes it to a CSV file. Right? Pretty quick and easy. What you will need to do, though, is because I need to access the network, I'm also going to create a scheduled job option. These are the things that you would see in the scheduled task manager for things like require network or run at highest privileges. So I'm going to create a new option that is going to allow me to run elevated and require the network. So if this is running and for some reason network access isn't available, the job won't run. And I have a hash table to splat my results. When the scheduled job runs, the results are also stored to disk. By default, it is 32. It's some really ungodly large number. You may want to limit the number of results that you get back, because those results are stored. So every time you go and do get jobs, it's going to show you all of these scheduled job results that have run on your machine. For example, on my main laptop at home, I have about 4 or 5 scheduled jobs that run. Now, some of them, when I set them up, I didn't pay any attention, and so I'll get like 32 job results for one job. So I get a couple of those. So I do get job, and I get like 100 results. So it's a little painful trying to find what I want. So think about how many results you really have to keep, set that max result count. And then the last thing is to register the scheduled job. This will create the job definition in the task scheduler. So here's how I'm going to use this. I am going to, because I'm logged on here as my Jeff account in Global Antics, I am going to I need to make sure that the scheduled job also uses that credential so it can access network resources. So I'm just going to hopefully not screw this up. Get my credential. I have an array of a couple computers. Now, DC01 is running 2008 R2 core. Testo 1 and Testo 2 are 2012 R2 servers. And then I'm just going to invoke the command specifying the path to my file in the current directory, the computers, and then passing the credential so that it can be used to create the scheduled job. So when I run that line, I'm using remoting and creating, so notice the ID is 1, because those are 3, the same job, but created on 3 different machines. So in the task scheduler, so here I'm on the local machine, because I'm on Testo 1, by the way. Under Microsoft Windows, PowerShell, there's a scheduled jobs folder. This is where all scheduled jobs exist. If we see refresh, this one already had a scheduled job created earlier called Daily Proc. Here's where my mouse went to. And just there's the scheduled job I just created, and you can see down here that runs whether user logged in or not, that do not store password is unchecked, so now I'll be able to access network resources. If I not specify the credential, that would be checked, and this job would really not do anything. And I seem to have lost a mouse. No, who needs a mouse? AIC without a mouse. Yeah, there's no. That's gone.
Jeff, why are you losing your mouse? Why are you losing your mouse?
I have no idea why.
Oh.
You know what?
I have an ARC. Do you want to plug it in and try it?
I have a. I can try my mouse. Problem is, everything slides around up here. I don't know if it's because I'm in the terminal services session, and
There you go.
Something just moved, yeah.
so as long as I hold on to this mouse, we're good. So, these scheduled jobs exist in a particular location. Let me see if I can run this script. So what I have done, let me go back to the code here. I'm going to watch my time. Because this is something I'm running remotely on my servers, dollar computers here, is, well, let's do it here. Get scheduled job. Yeah.
Do wildcards work?
I think wildcards do work. This is what the scheduled job actually looks like on scheduled task service. It runs, basically creates a PowerShell.exe, which is then going to kick off a PowerShell session. It's going to load the job module and then pull the job definition. You can see the directory there, the draft data, local, Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. Gets a scheduled job and then runs it. That is the same thing that you would see here if I were to right-click Properties, go to Actions, Edit. That's all here in the arguments, right? So PowerShell Schedule Jobs creates all of that for me. And all I did with my little script here, they're not like raised desks. I need flat. Was to pull the scheduled job, because remember I'm using the same credential. So I can see all those jobs that I created. Now, however, what I won't see on DC01, what did you see? Test shot. Because DC01 should have. Nope, that is good. Okay, never mind. So you can use that to find all of the jobs that are created. Trying to manage them, though, do the same thing here. I'm going to import the module now. I'm specifically importing it because some of my machines are running PowerShell version 3, and if I don't do that, I won't be able to get the scheduled job. So let's run that, and this should give me then a report showing me, kind of formatted by computer, all the scheduled jobs that it knows about. At least I can find using the same credentials that I'm using here. Back to the task scheduler, if my mouse will quit drifting around. is my exception. My laptop has touch, so
There you go.
I'm going to put some name on it. Windows, PowerShell, schedule jobs. All right, so those are my schedule jobs. I never thought about doing this through touch, but I'll adapt. However, the other way that you can get this is with the schedule task command line. Again, this is what requires Windows 8 or later. Because all of the jobs live in this particular path, I can do that. So I have a little script here that will basically just take a list of computer names and enumerate. This is just more for the sake of my demonstration, so I don't have to type all of that. Run that line. That's the error message you get because DC01 can't be managed with get scheduled task. So if you see that message, that's what that means. Now I can still go on to that machine and use the scheduled job commandlets, but if you want to use the scheduled task command, it's not going to work. I need to upgrade him to 2012 if I want that to work. I also wrote a little script here, I can find, to get task detail. I do have. What I need to do, actually, is I need to run that scheduled job that I just created so I have some results. And the easy way to do that is just to use get scheduled task, specify the name of the task on my computers, and then just pipe the start schedule task. So now on all machines, except for DC01, I can't do that. But now that scheduled task to get the disk usage is running on all my machines. I just did that so I could manually get some results. DC01, what I have to do is import the module and then start the job. To start the job, you use the definition name, but that's new in V3. And then specify, I created a session. So I need to create the session, because if you don't create the session, then it will start it, and then the session, the remote session ends and your job never really gets a chance to finish. So I have a PS session, and now I can run that. So now on DC01, it's running that scheduled job. So you can run scheduled jobs either with get scheduled task, type the start scheduled task, or use start job and just specify the definition in it. Now I also wrote a script here that will use the scheduled task commandlets to find basically a report. Show me what's been running, who it's running as, did it run, when it's going to run next. So it's using the get scheduled task info commandlet, which gives me a little more detail, and it's basically creating a custom object to show the pieces that were of interest to me. And I was going to try to run this and send the results to out grid view. Now we need out grid view, Mr. Snover, to be able to be scalable.
Font size?
Font size, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't know, hopefully people can kind of see that in the back. But I can now check all my computers and I can see the name of the task, if it's disabled or not. I can see what credentials it's running under. I can see what's enabled, what's disabled. I can see the run history and the last result. Zeros are good. So there's and maybe that's something that you want to run as a scheduled job itself. So at a weekly basis, check the health of the scheduled jobs, what's not running that should be running, and then you can use PowerShell to remotely fix that, or, there's nothing wrong with using the GUI here. The schedule task manager allows you very easily to connect to a single machine. So you just have a single machine, GUIs are fine. But if you're trying to do lots of things like reporting, PowerShell is great for that. I feel like I'm doing like micro brain surgery up here, trying to get this mouse to. Nope, I can just stop it. All right, well, the last thing I want to show you here, and even though some of my demos I may not get to, I'll share them with you, and they should have comments and stuff, is my Schedule Tools module. Which I'm just going to go right in here. So I have a report. All right, so I have a module that has two commandlets, export schedule job and import schedule job. Easy way to do this is to do get schedule job. So you can use wildcard. I'm going to export schedule job, get the path. Now let's do it right here. Now all you have to do is specify the path. It will create an XML file. Because all it's doing is using export CLI XML. You'll create an XML file with the same name. So now what I can do is, here, let's get that scheduled job, and here's how you unregister it, get rid of it. So if you have jobs that you wanted to get rid of across multiple machines, you just basically run that command within both commands, specify the computers, done. And then later outside, maybe a different machine. Oh, I want to recreate that scheduled job. Import scheduled job, specify the path. I think I have verbose output here. And now it has recreated that scheduled job with the exact same settings that I had. Now, I was expecting to be prompted for a credential, so I'm going to have to double check that. But I'm running it under the same credentials. Well, here, let's just double check and see what it says here in Schedule Task Manager. It worked before in all of my other demos. This has been just a couple days of just speaker nightmares. I'm going to have PSTD here. Yeah, so something did not get stored right. I'm going to have to look to see before I release it to you. Because it should prompt me for the password. Notice it only has access to local resources, and that's not going to work. So I'll have to look to see what I missed. Because when I tested it, actually when I first built this, it worked just fine. It prompted me for credentials and everything. I don't know what changed in my test environment in the last day. Something did. But that should work. I'll make it work before I share it with you. So you may need scheduled jobs, or you may not. Because a lot of the stuff I've shown you, you could easily do just with scripting. But if you want to work with scheduled jobs, you've got the scheduled job module, and ideally, I think you're going to want to take advantage of those scheduled task commandos as well. All right, so I got we still have a little time left for me to answer your questions. Did I answer your question? Was that the bug you were? Yeah.
Did you say that if it was fixed in another release, or?
No, as far as I know, it's still a bug. Because when I was building my demos and stuff, I ran into it and go, what is that? And then I did research and go, oh yeah, I wrote about that. And actually I'm mentioning Connect that I wrote about it.
We've been dealing with it for years, and it's just very irritating.
Well, you can go to Connect and vote it up. I think it has like 6 votes now, but yeah, so there's a bug there on alternate credentials with PowerShell scheduled jobs. So, but
I'll bring it up there,
the easiest thing to do is just not create the job with the right credentials in the first place, and that seems to work. It's when you're creating it and specifying alternate credentials, seems to be some access control issue, I think.
Yeah, the only way that we get it to work is if we log onto the box with the account that's actually going to be running the job. So if it's a service account, we have to log onto the box with the service account, create the job, then log off, and it's no like that.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, this question.
Yeah, I was just mentioning, we see scheduled jobs as an option to avoid double authentication. So probably in your example, if you try to promote into a session and invite to the file server, that probably wouldn't work in default config.
Oh, yeah.
So jobs are a good option to.
No, because the job is running on the machine. So when it makes that connection to that file server, that's just one hop. I created a job that's going to run to another machine, but when it's running on like that weekly disk usage. When it kicked off, the server, the task service on, say, test 02, kicked off a PowerShell session, loaded the job definition, said, oh, I need to write to a file share, I've got network credentials, it just works. So there's no second hop issue there.
No, I agree with you, but that's another option, if I think, to use jobs instead of just promoting into.
Oh, yeah. If you want to use, if I want to do something like this, I could do a job for my machine to query the other machines, and then for my machine, I collate all the information, and then write it once. Yeah, lots of ways to do this.
What's the error message again?
Oh, you'll get some message about the task was terminated by the user. So, yeah.
This may be just me screwing up, but I've noticed if I create a scheduled job and I realize, oh, I messed up the trigger, it's easier to blow the job away and start from scratch.
So.
When I've tried to replace the trigger, it doesn't work.
Yeah. One thing, when you unregister a scheduled job, that will also delete any of the job results. So if you have run a scheduled job a couple times and you want or need the results, make sure you receive the job and receive the job results like you would with any other job before you unregister it. Because as soon as you do that, it blows away the history. But yet usually if I screw something up, it's easier just to unregister the job and recreate it. And that's why if you build a script to do it, it simplifies. Instead of trying to type it all out in one or two lines. Other questions? Yeah.
Since these scheduled jobs are being created in the task scheduler, is it assumed that the logon of the batch job write is required for the user that is running the job? We have a GPO that restricts it on our client machine, so if we wanted to have something run on there, that whoever is running the job would have to have that right on there.
Well, this is no different than if you manually created a scheduled task and specified a credential to say start notepad. It shouldn't be any different than that. Because it's not logging on as a service or anything. The scheduled task service is spinning up PowerShell, loading the job definition, or running whatever you have, whatever PowerShell commands you have. But I don't think that should be an issue.
I think you still need to log on to the cache count, right, though. If it's been specifically revoked for people, as, specified only this particular credential, or user or group, whoever has permissions for that. I don't know.
I did mention you need to test this all in a non-production environment, right? Yeah.
So I manage about 600 servers. I've used scheduled jobs a lot, but I found that for pre-2012, I can use the sched task executable and do everything I need through there. And I can get last run, I can change everything. So I'm kind of waiting until everything's 2012. I'll start using scheduled task command list, but I just wrapped the executable.
Yeah, and until we have these modules, that's what a lot of people did. They used the command line sched tasks tool, and yeah. So there are a number of ways you can do that.
The real big advantage of these is that you didn't show was the ability to get output. So you can get this stuff. He showed all the results. You were logging it to a file, but you could just run the commands, and output is just write things to output.
Right.
And you can receive the job and receive it.
Yeah.
Whereas with scheduled task in general, Mark was asking about debuggability. That's a problem in general with scheduled task. Like if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, who the heck knows? Whereas with scheduled jobs, we collect all those errors, etc., and you can see it.
Yeah, but the thing is with that, you have to make sure that the job was created with credentials you're going to be using.
Yep.
So if you're creating jobs, and a lot of people are creating jobs with all sorts of different credentials, it's going to be next to impossible to manage them from one place or one person. Right.
Isn't this creating kind of a perfect test or case scenario for setting up a delegated remote session?
Yeah, again, scheduled jobs is just one way that you could accomplish
Well, yeah,
what you need
because
to
you
do.
have this constraint about you have to use the same credentials to read the stuff as you created the job. You always have to make sure you use the same credentials. If you create a constrained remote session delegated with those credentials and always connect to that session, that's done automatically.
Yeah, okay. I mean, okay. A little more work. I mean, I guess it often comes down to
We should fix our
what
bug.
task do you need? What task do you need to automate or have run on a scheduled basis, and where is the best place for that to happen? Maybe it is on multiple machines. Maybe it's just on one machine, and you're not even using all of this.
The next result count, is that how many runs of these tasks?
Now, what that means here is if I do get just want to run, okay, so I've run my daily proc command twice. If I were to do start job, this does not like wildcards. All right, so now that job is running.
It's not great.
And then all of these things I'm showing you, again, you could use remoting to find on other machines, provided you're using the right credentials. And what Mr. Snover is saying is I could say receive job, and let's just do -ID 58, which seems to be the latest one. Keep it. So, and there's my result. Now in this case, my job, all it does is exports and processes it to XML and just gets the file, so I've got something to see. But however many times that I run that job, I'll keep getting job results when I run get job, even after I reboot the computer, because all those job results are written to disk in that app data directory. So if you have multiple scheduled jobs, each using the default, which is I think 32 results, that's a lot of things scrolling across your screen. So then what you have to do, and I've got one other thing here. I built a little tool called Get Last Job Result that gets the jobs and then gets the last one for each scheduled job. So I can get the last results. So if I wanted to check that weekly disk usage report, now I deleted it on, I can't get DC01, but there on test 02, the job last ran, you can see the time and see how long it took. So I'm basically using the same get job and looking at the job results, because in PowerShell 3, they added these nice PS begin and end time, so you can see how long the job took to run. I calculated the run time by just subtracting the two. Other questions? And I think one more, yeah.
Is there any negative effect, like, because you can go into Schedule Task Manager and see, like, drill into the PowerShell one and see the definition in there. If you use the GUI to edit that, is there any, like, negative effects or?
Yeah, I've always been under the working assumption, if I create the job in PowerShell, I should manage it,
Right.
set it, and use all the PowerShell commandments.
Right.
Some of the things you might be okay in modifying the task scheduler. Personally, I would learn to use the other commandments.
Right.
No. I'm around if you want to talk about this more. Thank you all for your time. I think I need to wrap up for the next person.